Shalom. I'm going to start off by giving all praise, honor, and glory as well as worship to Yahweh, Ba'Hashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'Hashem, Rakak, Wadash. Double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, the leaders of Israel, and Shalom to the sincere brothers that's out there teaching this truth, the 144% truth, and Shalom to the sincere men, women, and children that's listening in truth and sincerity. All right, we're going to get into a quick topic, Lord willing, about the Sabbath. You know, what is the real Sabbath according to the scriptures? All right, first we're going to get into some secular history, and then we're going to get into the main source, the Holy Bible. All right.
It's off Google.com and read
This is the origin of April Fool's Day, and it what's that word? It correlates on point with the calendar.
Some historians speculate that April Fool's Day dates back to 1582, when France switched from the Julian calendar to the Gregorian calendar, as called for by the Council of Trent in 1563. People who were slow to get the news or failed to recognize that the start of the new year had moved to January 1st and continued to celebrate it during the last week of March through April 1st became the butt of jokes and hopes.
Right, so first they switched the new year, you know, because we did a video before, you know, the new year starts between March and April. All right, so they changed it from March late March, early April to January 1st. All right, so that's them switching up the calendar. So the calendar has been changed. All right, the Julian calendar, and now today we use the Gregorian calendar. All right. Yeah. You go to etymology of calendar. All right. When you look into the etymology of calendar.
You know, the scriptures just say we can't be ignorant of Satan's devices. You know, so we gotta look up stuff for ourselves. You know, the scriptures just say this, you gotta study to show yourself approved. You know, so we can't just go off what the white man say, you know, New Year's is, or, you know, any of these holidays, you know, like Easter, Valentine's Day. You know, we got to go into the origin. Got to go to the origin of what we celebrate.
This is the etymology. This is etymology.com, and this is the etymology of the word calendar. It says the years as divided systematically into days and months. Table showing divisions of the year. It says from Old French calendar. It says list, register. From Latin calendarium, account books. The calends, the first day of the Roman month, which debt falls due, and accounts were reckoned. Also says this is also Calere to announce, solemnly call out, as the priest did in proclaiming the new moon that mark the calendars. All right, it says, I'm gonna read that again. It says, as the priest did in proclaiming the new moon that marked the calendars. All right, so the new moon, that word moon means month. All right, so it said the new moons had marked the calendar. You know, it marked the beginning of a new month. All right, and that's how we go off the days. All right, and it continues to read. It says, as the priest did in proclaiming the new moon that marked the calends from Ruth, Cali to Shout, and Rome, new moons were not calculated mathematically, but rather observed by the priests from the capital. When they saw it, they would declare the number of days to the nuns, 5 or 7 depending on the month. The word was taken by the early church for its registered list of saints and their feast days, meaning lists of documents arranged chronologically from late 15th century. All right, so it says clear as day, you know, on the etymology of calendar that the new moons, that those mark the days. All right. So now we're gonna get into some scriptures, you know, and the scriptures line up with the etymology of the word calendar. I'm sorry, in the book of Deuteronomy. You get Shabath 43 and 6. This is Deuteronomy chapter 17. Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 3. It says, and have gone and served other gods and worshiped them, either the sun or moon or any of the hosts of heaven, which I have commanded not. You know, so even though we observed the moon, you know, to calculate our days, just like in the ancient days. All right, they had watchmen out there to watch out for when the new moon comes in. You know, that's how we would know that the new moon is coming in, by the watchman. All right, so we not worshiping the moon, we just observing it. All right, and the Lord Yahweh, by Shem Yahweh, He commanded us not to worship the moon. You know, so it's not moon worship.
This Ecclesiasticus chapter 43 and verse 6. He made the moon also to serve in her season for a declaration of time and a sign of the world. Verse 7, from the moon and the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection.
Read in verse 8.
Verse 8, the month is called after her name.
Right, so the month is called after her name. That word moon means month. All right, so when it's a new moon, that just means a new month. All right.
Increasing wonderfully in her changing, being an instrument of the armies above, shining in the firmaments of heaven.
All right, can you read verse 7 again?
43 and verse 7. From the moon is the sign of feast.
Right, so the moon, that's how we know, that's how we determine our feast days. All right, the new moon it's a Sabbath. All right, you can't buy or sell, and it's also a feast day. All right, and that same way you determine the Passover, our Purim, all our high holy days, you determine that by the moon.
And our high holy days we consider the Sabbath.
Not all of them.
Alright, Ecclesiastes chapter 43 and verse 7 again. From the moon is the sign of feast, a light that decreaseth in her perfection.
This is the book of Amos, chapter 8 and verse 5. You can get Ezekiel 46 and 1. 46 and 1. Yeah. This is the book of Amos, chapter 8, verse 5. I'm going to start at verse 4. Amos chapter 8, verse 4. Hear this, O ye that swallow up the needy, even to make the poor of the land to fail, saying, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. All right, so in the scriptures, the new moon and the Sabbath, they go hand in hand. They always, it's numerous scriptures where the new moon and the Sabbath, they hand in hand because they're the same thing. It says, Amos chapter 8 verse 5 said, when will the new moon be gone, that we may sell corn, and the Sabbath, that we may set forth wheat, making the ephah small and the shekel great, and falsifying the balances by deceit. Because on a new moon you can't buy, you can't sell. All right, you can't do no servile work. All right, that's the same thing with the Sabbath. All right, on the Sabbath we can't buy or sell, we can't do servile work. All right, so the new moon and the Sabbath, those are the pretty much the same. It's the same days. All right.
Ezekiel chapter 46 and verse 1. Thus saith the Lord power, the gate of the inner court that looketh towards the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be open, and in the day of the new moon it shall be open.
Right. So on the day of the Sabbath and the day of the new moon, because those are the same things. All right. It says, can you read that again?
Ezekiel 46 and 1. Thus saith the Lord power, the gate of the inner court that looketh towards the east shall be shut the 6 working days, but on the Sabbath it shall be open, and in the day of the new moon it shall be open.
Right. So the Sabbath and the new moon is the same thing. All right. It says 6 working days it shall be closed, but on the Sabbath and on the new moon it shall be open. All right. So that's 6 days. All right. So if the new moon falls on a let's say a so-called Wednesday, all right, and then but some people, because some people they don't go, they say if the new moon is Wednesday, the Sabbath is still Friday, but how does that doesn't correlate with that scripture? All right, because it says 6 days. All right, so 6 days it shall be closed, but the 7th day it shall be open, because it's a Sabbath, on a Sabbath or on a new moon. So after every Sabbath, after every Sabbath is always it's always 6 days. You got sometimes a Sabbath can be back to back. All right, but it's always during the regular Sabbath days throughout the normal week. All right, it's always 6 days. Then on the seventh day, all right, you either got a new moon or you got a Sabbath. Right?
A lot of people look at that 6 days and be like, okay, the first day start on Sunday, so that means Friday night to Saturday night. That's the Sabbath. but you gotta, your that first day determines off the new moon. You know, that first day don't determine off the calendar of Esau, and it says the first day is Sunday.
Right, because we never, like back in the ancient days, you know, we didn't have it. There was no calendar, you know. So Moses, you know, what was he look? Was he looking off days of the week? You know, and these days of the week didn't come about until like the 1500s. All right, so you got to think about what was our forefathers using back then in the day. All right, we was using the moon. All right, you can get Genesis 1:14.
And even in the ancient days, you know, they used the stars as a compass. You know, so we wasn't using, you know, these devices that we got today, like a GPS or keeping up with Esau's calendar. You know, we was using the resources that Yahweh put on the earth.
You know, and a lot of camps they go off the Gregorian calendar and also go off the moon. You know, they go off the moon for the new moons. You know, when the new moon is dark, you know, then they say it's a new moon. But then they go back to Esau's calendar with the Sabbath. You know, so as being double-minded. You know, James 1:8 it says a double-minded is unstable. A double-minded man is unstable in all his ways. All right. Genesis 1:14.
Genesis chapter 1 and verse 14. And Yahweh said, "Let there be lights in the firmament of the heaven to divide the day from the night, and let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years."
All right, that's talking about the moon. You read that again?
Genesis 1 and verse 14. And Yahweh said, "Let there be light in the firmament of heaven to divide the day from the night."
Let's talk about the moon and the sun. Because how do you tell when it's nighttime? You got the moon, you got the light from the moon. And how do you tell it's daytime? You got the sun.
And let them be for signs and for seasons and for days and for years.
Right, for signs, for days, for seasons, and for years. All right, so it says days, man. All right, so we use the moon to calculate our days. All right, and quick precept. This is the book of Psalms, chapter 104, and verse 19. It says, "He appointed the moon for seasons. The sun north is going down." All right, so Yahweh he appointed the moons as seasons, man. All right. I'm gonna get the book of Leviticus. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and verse 24. It says, "Speak unto the children of Israel, saying, in the 7th month, and the first day of the month, shall ye have a Sabbath, memorial of blowing of the trumpets, and holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by fire unto the Lord Yahweh." All right, so it says clear as day. You know, it says in the 7th month and the first day of the month, ye shall have a Sabbath. All right, because the first day of the month, that's the new moon. All right, so the new moon is a Sabbath. All right, and it says. But yeah, this is the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and verse going to start at verse 7. It says, Leviticus chapter 23, verse 7, it says, "In the first day ye shall have an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein, but ye shall offer an offering made by the fire unto the Lord Yahweh 7 days. In the seventh day it is an holy convocation. Ye shall do no servile work therein." All right, so that's the first day. That's a holy convocation. No servile work. That's the Sabbath. All right, and then it says, "In the seventh day is an holy convocation. You shall do no servile work with therein." All right, because on the first and then if you go 7 days after that, that's the 8th day. All right, so the Sabbath, it always lands on the first day, the 8th day, the 15th day, the 22nd day, and the 22nd. The first, that's the first day. That's the first Sabbath. All right, then you got the 8th, then you got the 15th, then you got the 22nd. All right. Actually, it's actually the 8th, then the 15th, then the 22nd, then the 29th. All right, so that's four regular Sabbaths. All right, after the first Sabbath, which is the new moon. All right. You get Isaiah 66 and 23.
Isaiah chapter 66 and verse 23. "And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord."
That's 66 and 23.
Yeah.
Can you read it again?
Isaiah chapter 66 verse 23. "And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me, saith the Lord."
Right. So that's another precept for the new moon and the Sabbath. All right. It says from "And it shall come to pass that from one new moon to another, and from one Sabbath to another, shall all flesh come to worship before me." All right. So from the next month to the next month, all right, and every Sabbath, we come to worship the Lord Yahweh. All right, because the new moon and the Sabbath, they go hand in hand in the scriptures. All right, you can get Nehemiah 10 and 31. And I'm gonna get this is the book of Judith. Judith chapter 8 and verse 6. It reads, "And she fasted all the days of her widowhood, save the eves of the Sabbaths, and the Sabbaths, and the eves of the new moons, and the new moons, and the feasts and solemn days of the house of Israel." All right, so that's another example, man. You got the new moon and the Sabbath; they going hand in hand. All right, and it also says the other feast days. All right, because and the new moon and the new moon and the Sabbath is the same thing. Those are feast days. You're not really supposed to fast for those days because those are feast days to the Lord Yahweh. All right. Yeah, boy. Yeah. What is it? 10:31. Want to bring it up? Yeah.
Nehemiah chapter 10 verse 31. "And if the people of the land bring ware or any vehicles on the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day, and that we would leave the 7th year and the evaction of every debit.
You read 31 again?
Nehemiah chapter 10, verse 31. And if the people of the land bring ware or any vehicles on the Sabbath day to sell, that we would not buy it of them on the Sabbath or on the holy day, and that we would leave the 7th year and the evaction of every debit.
Right, we don't buy on the Sabbath, right? And, or on the new moon, right? Yeah, you don't buy on the Sabbath or on the new moon.
Because we're supposed to treat the new moon like the Sabbath, and we're supposed to treat the Sabbath like the new moon.
You get First Maccabees 10 and 34. This is the book of Leviticus, chapter 23, and verse 15. And ye shall count unto you from the morrow after the Sabbath, from the day that ye bought the sheaf of the wave offering, 7 Sabbaths shall be complete. You know, so we all, even back in the ancient days, we counted the days. All right, we counted the days after the Sabbath. All right. And it says, verse 16, it says, even unto the morrow after the 7th Sabbath shall ye number 50 days, and ye shall offer a new meat offering unto the Lord Yahweh. All right, so we number 50 days, because those was our feast days, and all those days was numbered after the new moon. All right, so we kept number of the days. All right, because that's how we determine our feast days. All right, 10 and 31, 34.
First Maccabees chapter 10, verse 34. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and the Sabbaths and the new moon and solemn days and the 3 days before the feast and the 3 days after the feast shall be all days of immunity and freedom for all the Jews in my realm.
Right, so that's another example of the Sabbath and the new moon. They being right next to each other in the scriptures. All right, and that's because the new moon and the Sabbath, those are the same thing, pretty much the same thing. All right, and it says 3 days before the feast and 3 days after the feast. Read that again.
First Maccabees chapter 10, verse 34. Furthermore, I will that all the feasts and Sabbaths and the new moons and solemn days and the 3 days before the feast and the 3 days after the feast shall be all days of humility and freedom for all the Jews in my realm.
All right, so so that's pretty much just going into the Sabbath and the new moons, man. All right, and it said 3 days before the feast, because those days were solemn. Those was high holy days, solemn assembly days. All right. All right, so Lord willing, this video and lesson was edifying. All right, Actually, we can get Judges 5 and 11. Even the elder apostle Tahar, he said, there's no hard feelings, if you don't follow the Sabbath according to the moon, we still rehearsing the righteous acts. All right, but to teach it, and it's not correct, that's just going off. All right, but we, at the end of the day, we still rehearse the righteous acts, so there's no hard feelings, but this is just the truth according to the scriptures. All right.
So just be honest and say, celebrating Friday night, Saturday night, that's the best days I can keep the Sabbath instead of teaching it. Judges chapter 5 and verse 11. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the place of drawing water, there shall they rehearse the righteous acts of the Lord, even the righteous acts towards the inhabitants of his village in Israel. Then shall the people of the Lord go down to the gates.
So that's what we doing, in the land of our captivity. I think it said the waters, the archer, the noise of the archer waters.
I'm going to read it again. They that are delivered from the noise of archers in the place of drawing waters.
Right, that's it. That represents captivity. All right, so even though we're in captivity, we still rehearsing the righteous acts. All right, so everybody at the end of the day, they still rehearsing the righteous acts. All right, because a lot of people they celebrate Passover on different days. And they even keep the new moon on a full moon. All right, like IUIC, but at the end of the day, it's still rehearsing the righteous acts. All right. So we're gonna close out. Lord willing, this video is edifying. All right, we're gonna close out. Give all praise, honor, and glory to Yahweh, Ba'ashem, Yahweh Shai, Ba'ashem, Rakak Kodash, and double honors to the apostles and elders of Great Millstone, the leaders of Israel, and shalom to the sincere brothers out there laboring in this truth, and the sincere sisters that's listening in truth and subjection. To the next lesson, we say shalom.
Shalom.